Hey guys, so over the course of this channel, you all may have heard me mention like, oh, this is my favorite book of all time, or oh, this is one of my favorite books of all time. I've said it quite a few times, and in honor of World Book Day tomorrow, I just wanted to create this like one special video where I basically share with you all for the first time in one place my favorite books of all time. These, I mean, I've read 5-star books, I've read great books, but these 19 right here are like the top of the top of the top of the top. Like, they just mean everything to me. These are the books, like, God forbid, if your library was ever on fire, these are the 19 books that I would try to grab with me on the way out the door. Even though they're all of my favorites, they're not ranked, but the last one, the very last book that you're gonna see is my favorite book, like, ever. It is the pinnacle of this pile. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first book that is kicking off this huge list of greatness is 1984 by George Orwell. This was not required for me to read in school. I don't know why. So I was well into adulthood by the time I finally picked this book up. And guys, oh my goodness, this book, I mean, it's a modern classic. I'm sure you all have some semblance of, at this point, what 1984 is about. But we essentially have this government, this dystopian society, and the government controls everything. Like, it's just all seeing. It's very extreme, and they really control the narrative for the people's lives. And so we have this main character, Winston, who works for an aspect of the government. I believe he helps to like rewrite or like change newspaper facts or something that happens in newspapers. And basically he kind of gets himself wrapped up in the finer details of this all-seeing government and society. And it's crazy that this was written in 1949 as a look of what 1984 would look like. And this is something that should be on everybody's reading list if you have not read it already. So that is the first book that we're starting things off with, and it's already, I think, a strong start to this. The next book is The Lonely Hearts Hotel by Heather O'Neill. We have these orphans. This takes place in Montreal, I believe in the early 20th century, somewhere around there. And we have these orphans, Pierrot and Rose, who they're at this orphanage and they develop a really strong bond with each other, a really great friendship. And that friendship starts turning into something they think a little bit more than what it is. But before they can really find out, the two of them are separated. Pierrot, he takes to the streets of Montreal and gets involved in a downward spiral of drugs and the hardcore city life. And Rose, on the other hand, she falls into this life of adult work and really trying to come to terms with her identity in a really cold and unforgiving Montreal. But as Pierrot and Rose are kind of navigating their two separate lives and we're getting their parallel stories, they never lose this magic that they had together when they were young and in the orphanage, and they had big dreams of doing great things together, and that flame kind of stays inside both of them. It's a really heartbreaking and a really this book is just everything. It's everything. Heather O'Neill's writing is so magical, and she brushes over, I mean, she states the most like horrific things in the most beautiful ways. It's really hard to describe. This book will stay with me for the rest of my life. The next book that we have on here, you all have heard me mention this pretty frequently, and that is City of Savages by Lee Kelly. I was not expecting anything from this book when I read it. That is the crazy thing about it. This book was on my shelf for a long time, and one day I was just like, I was honestly just sick of looking at it and tired of it being unread, and I was just like, whatever, I just kind of snatched it up, started reading. That's honestly how it happened. And then, I mean, somewhere around the middle of this book, I'm just thinking, man, this is really good. And I think of all of these, of all the books that I'm going to show you, this is definitely, I'm looking at the stack, this is definitely the most, not the most well-known book. I think it has the least amount of ratings on Goodreads, like maybe 1,000. So it's definitely not a lot of people talking about this. And I keep saying this, I say this every time I talk about this book. I don't think everybody is going to like this book, and that's fine. We have these two sisters in post-apocalyptic Manhattan, and Manhattan has been walled off at this point. And these two sisters, Skylar and Phoenix, I forget who's older, it doesn't even matter, but we get the book from their two perspectives, and they've grown up in this walled off city. And then one day someone comes in from the outside, something happens that just kind of shatters everything that they know about their current world and about the world that came before. And in one of the sisters' perspectives, we're actually following a timeline of the world that came before via a diary that she finds. So we're getting those two back to back. The relationship between these sisters is handled so well. It's honestly just great to read about. Like, one of them, I'm honestly forgetting like whose personality is what, but one of them is really a go-getter. She's just like kind of shoot first, ask questions later type of person. And then the other one, the older one, she is more book smart, and she's a lot more quiet, and she has a lot of insecurities because she is older and she's not like her sister, who is more outgoing and really a go-getter. So you have them kind of dealing with their own insecurities concerning each other, and just really trying to grow up against the backdrop of this apocalyptic world. And oh my God, this book really hit me in ways I was not anticipating. So of all of the books on this list that I'm going to share with you, this was definitely the surprise favorite. I never in a million years thought I would pick up this book of all things on my shelf, and this would be the one to hit me the hardest. So I love it, of course, because it's on the list, and it was great. Ooh, okay. Next one, we're getting into more of a recent read. Let's see. This book right here, it's If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This was one of my recent reads. I finished this a couple of months ago. I freaking love this book so much. This is totally in the vein of like The Secret History and like Bellwether Revivals, those type of books. You have this group of friends who they attend this they're Shakespearean actors, they're thespians, and they attend this school that allows them to put all of their focus and their time and attention on the works of Shakespeare. And so you have this small group of students, like 6 of them, 6 or 7, and all they do, literally all they do for college credit is they learn, they perform, and they basically live, sleep, and breathe Shakespearean plays. And so what really kicks the book into motion, we have this main character, Oliver, who is being released from prison the moment the book starts. And the detective who put him in prison is like, okay, you're out of prison now. You're going to tell me what happened all of those years ago when you were in school to basically get you to this point now. And so in the book, we're getting flashbacks from his time at school, and a murder that took place, and basically everything following the murder that led to the main character's arrest and imprisonment for 10 years. This book, there is a point in this book, and I'm not spoiling anything, but because they're so heavily invested in Shakespeare, I mean, these students have his lines like down. They recite his lines in conversation. And I love the fact that you don't need to know anything about Shakespeare to love and appreciate this book, because I definitely did not. But there comes a point things reach an all-time high, and the tension is so thick between these characters. The 2 characters start having a full-blown argument in nothing but Shakespeare quotes. And when I tell you the chills that were running down my arm, it was insane. This is just fantastic. It was an instant favorite. Like, before I even finished it, it was just perfect. The setting, the mood, everything, it just feels so unsettled when you're among this group of students. I loved it so much. These are the videos I live for. I love talking about this. Okay. Where are we going with this? All right. Next book. I've talked about this a few times too, so this probably is not a surprise, but that is Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. He is one of my favorite, not only is this my favorite book of all time, he's one of my favorite authors. Like, I will read anything this man puts out. This is a collection of 8 science fiction short stories, and I mean the topics are all over the place. The concepts that Ted Chiang is writing about, they're so massive. The fact that someone could even write like this and try to, convey all those ideas in something like this, it's mind-blowing to me. It's honestly, I truly think a work of genius. The first story in here, I've talked about this before, the first story in here is the Tower of Babylon, and it's a totally unique take on the biblical myth, the Tower of Babel. And you basically have this town, these men in the town, they're trying to build this tower to heaven. And Ted Chiang is like, well, what if they actually break through? What if someone were to actually build something high enough to reach heaven? Like, what would that look like? And the journey up there is insane. Then we have this other story, Division by Zero. It's probably one of my favorite short stories anywhere. We have this woman, this brilliant mathematician, who ends up essentially proving that every number is equal to another number. And the fact that she was able to prove something like this is driving her insane, and it's ruining her marriage. And you kind of have the disintegration of her and her life, but at the root of all that, it's love. It's just, oh gosh. And what I love about this is why, this is the kind of book, I'm not exaggerating here, this is the kind of book that makes me realize why I love reading science fiction. Science fiction is the genre of ideas and tackling big concepts. But Ted Chiang has a way of boiling those concepts down to their roots and taking these stories and making them universal for everybody. Taking a concept like being able to prove that every number equals every other number, and at the root of that somehow is love and marriage and relationships. Oh, I love it. I love this book so much. He has a second collection that's out on May 7th. The publisher was kind enough to send me a review copy of that after I was basically like, I would read his grocery list. I'm so excited to get to that. Yes, that's gonna be good. The next book that we have on here is Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. There's just no way that the average person just can sit down and be like, yes, let's write this. Like, I don't think that works. I don't think that's how it works. Like, we have 6 stories in 6 completely different time periods in the world. Like, one is centuries ago. And then we have another story that's set, like, in modern day London. And then one set in the 70s. And then one set in the future, like, way in the future. You have all of these different stories, all of these different characters within these stories. And somehow you have this narrative that is stringing them all together. The craziest thing I've ever read in my life. You read this book forward, switching between all these different perspectives, and then the book stops in the middle and kind of rebounds back through history and time and people and space. And oh my gosh, this book is amazing. My mind was actually blown when I read this. I guess this is classified as science fiction, but within this book, he's writing in so many different genres. Like, one time period, it feels like a mystery and thriller, and then one feels like just hardcore science, and then another just literary fiction. I mean, it's so crazy. This video is just making me so happy. Talk about things you like, people, not things you hate. The next book we got on here is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Let's all just take a step back and just have a collective moment of silence for the greatness that is Station 11, just for a second. It's classified as post-apocalyptic, and the beginning of the end of the world happens on stage during a production of King Lear. And then all of a sudden, the main character in the play, I think he has a heart attack. And there are people in the crowd that, obviously witness this and try to jump to his aid. And one of the characters that comes to his aid, their stories become intertwined. And then one of the kids in the audience, her story, we get her, we follow her story through the years and as she gets older. And you just kind of have this rotating cast of characters. And it's basically documenting I love this book so much. It's basically documenting like the end of the world and how the world rebuilds. This is such a quiet post-apocalyptic novel. I don't even want to keep saying post-apocalyptic. Like, it's just so much more than that. The writing is gorgeous. You just get this really sweeping narrative of the end of the world. And I just distinctly remember this scene at the end, towards the end, that really makes you think about your life and the things that you consider to be like your priorities right now. There was like this scene I remember of one of the men, they were in an airport, I believe, and he was saying to another guy, he was like, man, like, I can't believe the most important thing in my life was answering that email or, trying to set up a meeting or doing X, Y, and Z. It just really makes you put things into perspective and shines a light on, I think, the resilience of people and human nature. And it's a really gorgeous, gorgeous book. Next is a really great one. We have Big Fish by Daniel Wallace. The tagline of this book says, a novel of mythic proportions. And it is exactly that I can't even describe it any other way, quite honestly. We have this man, Edward Bloom. Throughout his entire life, Edward has told all of these really outlandish tales about how his life, everything from how he was born, the people that he's met in his life. I mean, they're just really like fantastic tales. They cannot possibly be real. And he's done that his whole life. That quality about him to always fabricate, or is he fabricating, to fabricate the finer detail or the great details of his life, have taken a toll on his son, William. And so we fast forward all these years and the book starts and Edward is actually dying. And William feels that this is his last chance to be able to connect with the father that he never knew and really never understood. As you go along, you realize that, okay, well, they may not all be true, or there may be some truth in there, because all stories have some element of truth in them. But this man has lived an extraordinary life, and like William just wants to connect with that and connect with something, some shred of truth to hold on to when his father dies. This book is amazing. The next one, guys, is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Whew. The Road. How can you even talk about The Road? This is also post-apocalyptic. We have this man and his son don't have names, and they are basically struggling to survive in the apocalypse. That is really the basis, the foundation of this story, essentially. I mean, father-son survival. That's really it. But the thing, and I realized later that this is not exclusive to this book. What really got me, though, about this book is the way that it's told. Cormac McCarthy has such a distinct writing style. And that writing style, if you've read his work, you know, like, he doesn't believe in traditional punctuation and quotation marks and all this kind of stuff. But that unique writing style, and this is the only book I've read by him, but that style, I think, works brilliantly with a book like this. But this is the first time I've connected with a story that made me physically sick. I had a headache for like 3 days after finishing this, because of the fact that there isn't that traditional punctuation, you are really forced to just be 100% in this story and 100% dedicated to like what is going on. And when you're reading that, when you're invested like that, and reading in the situations that they get themselves into, it really takes, I think, an emotional and kind of like physical toll on you. So this book just really kind of did a number on me as I was reading it. I learned that he does not shy away from hard things. So, something would be about to happen, and I'm like, are we really going there? Like, is this a thing? Like, should I keep reading? But Cormac McCarthy really takes you there. There's also just so much ambiguity surrounding this father and son and their situation. I think the writing style fits perfectly with the story that's trying to be told. And this book just left an impact on me in a way that no other book that I've ever read has. The next book on this list, you all have probably heard me talk about this as well. I cannot get enough of this book. This is The October Country by Ray Bradbury. This is a collection of short stories that they're just all complete, like stories of your life. I mean, they're all completely different, but they all have this central theme surrounding like autumn and changing weather and changing people, changing personalities, that kind of thing. What I love about this, not even just because Ray Bradbury is like a master of the fall atmosphere, and his mind is just, he passed away a few years ago. His mind was just so creative. I studied him when I was in my program, and we read that Ray Bradbury wrote a short story every day for a year, and so the creativity was always just pouring out of him. And Ray Bradbury, unlike any author I've read, has such a cool way through fantasy of getting to the root of people, and I love that, and I appreciate that so much in his work, especially this collection. If you want to experience Ray Bradbury but don't want to jump into his novel Fahrenheit 451 or anything like that quite yet, or even the Martian Chronicles, because I actually did not like the Martian Chronicles like that, I think this is a fantastic place to start. It's such a great introduction to his creativity and to how this is what I wanted to say, how he's just able to take mundane things that happen to people and turn them into the craziest situations while making a social commentary about it. The next book that I have here is one that I finished very recently, like this past weekend. And that is The Fire Next Time by the great James Baldwin. Oh my God. I've read a few of James Baldwin's works before, like Sonny's Blues, which is one of his short stories, Go Tell It on the Mountain, If Beale Street Could Talk. I know I'm missing one. But this one, I truly do not know why it has taken me so long to get to this fantastic piece of literature. The Fire Next Time is a work of nonfiction, and in it we have James Baldwin writing 2 letters, one of which is actually the bulk of the book, but writing 2 letters to his nephew on the eve of the 100-year anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation being signed. If there's one book you ever read, not even just on this list, but if there's ever one book you read in your lifetime, it needs to be this one. And the fact that I even feel that this strongly about that, having just read this, like, I'm telling you, fresh, like 2 days ago, that means that's a lot. And these 2 letters that Baldwin has written to his nephew, he is deep diving into the heart of racism in America. He's just touching on everything. He's touching on his experiences in the church and leaving the church, his relationship with the church and the people in the church, and the rhetoric against white Americans. He is grappling with so much in such a short span of time that really makes you confront not only what was happening, what was happening back then, but what's happening right now. And it's really a dark look to, like, not, let's not repeat the mistakes of the past that led us to this point, and that led him to this point that he's writing this, exploring ways that America as a people can move forward, and how, like, is that possible? How does that happen? I mean, but he is just, I get chills talking about this book. And at the end, it's basically like, this is what needs to happen in this country in order for us to avoid destruction, basically. I mean, this is honestly a work of, it's nothing short of a masterpiece. It just is. That's really it. Like, I think everybody, I was talking to my cousin about this, and she's like, everybody has that one Baldwin book that gets them, and The Fire Next Time is definitely that one for me. James Baldwin has had such a way of words, but also being able to examine society and its people, and also having the self-awareness to examine his place in society. Oh my gosh. And just, pressing everybody, readers now, to do the same thing. It's so thought-provoking, and I really think you walk away from this a better person, because I know I did. So my throat was cracking. I was getting a little emotional talking about that one. So next we have, not to damper the mood, next we have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. She has another novel coming out. Her second novel is coming out in November. Hype Train, I'm starting it right now. In The Night Circus, we have these 2 magicians, Celia and Marco, and they have been, actually there's a lot of things going on here. They've kind of been pitted against each other since they were young in basically 2 different competing types of magic. One is more innate, and then one is more like learned. And so they're those 2 types of learning are kind of put against each other, against the backdrop of The Night Circus. And within the walls of The Night Circus, it's just pure magic, even if it's not like real magic happening. It is just the writing. Erin Morgenstern's writing, her prose, is pure magic. It's kind of split different ways because, one is like, I believe one is third-person narrative, and then the alternating chapters are second-person narrative. So you, the reader, are walking through the Night Circus and looking at all the different attractions. And if there was ever a book that you just say, this is so magical, without including Harry Potter, like, this would totally be it. So I just realized, guys, I didn't include, I meant to say, I know I didn't include Harry Potter in this, but I meant to say in the beginning, and I forgot, that I'm not including Harry Potter in the all-time favorites video. Harry Potter is my all-time favorite series, but I'm not including it in the video because I put Harry Potter, like, in its own category of greatness. Like, I grew up on Harry Potter. That was my childhood growing up, so Harry Potter is, like, in my mind, its own thing. I don't even need to, like, include it in this. Like, Harry Potter is my favorite series, ever. So glad we got that out of the way. The next book is a classic, and that is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I have no idea why this book gets so much hate. This book is fantastic. I read this book so long ago, like I'm probably just gonna stumble all over what the actual plot is, but we have these group of kids who like land themselves on a deserted island. I think their plane crashed. It's been a long time. And so basically on this island, these kids, these boys, I don't even think they're like teenagers. They're like 11 or something. They start forming all these little packs and stuff like that. Things start breaking down and stuff just gets wild really, really fast. This is probably one of the only books that I had to read in school that I actually came away from and was like, wow, that was great. This is the only one. Next, guys, this one doesn't really need any explanation. That is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. Peter Pan is one of my favorite fairy tales. It's one of my favorite stories ever. And of all of the books on this list, Peter Pan is the one that I've reread the most. I read Peter Pan at least like once a year. I cannot get enough of this. I don't have any tattoos, but I always tell my mom this too. I'm always like, if I get a tattoo, like it's gonna be the 2 stars. That's like second star to the right, straight on to morning. Like I love this book so much. That would be my only tattoo ever. But I'm not going to get it because I can't commit to anything like that. Do I need to explain Peter Pan? You have, the story is actually really dark. We start off with these siblings who, one night they're all getting ready for bed. You all know the story. They're all getting ready for bed and Shadow breaks into their room. Shadow ends up being Peter Pan. And these 3 kids are whisked away to Neverland, where children, namely boys, do not grow up. But I actually encourage you guys, because I'm sure we all know like the Disney story and stuff like that, but I encourage you to actually go and read Peter Pan, because the actual story, and especially the story behind it, is just one of the most heartbreaking things. And there have been so many like philosophy papers on like Peter Pan's personality and state of mind and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it really is, this really is a timeless story. This next one, I'm not going to be able to explain to you guys at all. I actually am just going to encourage you to look at the book and then go look it up on Goodreads, because I'm not going to be able to explain this at all. And that is Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World by Haruki Murakami, the fantastic Haruki Murakami. We have parallel stories, and the main like the narrator in the main parallel story, he's what's considered a Calcutech, and oh my god, I'm not even remembering this right, I don't think. Calcutechs protect like different data and encryption or something like that, and the system that kind of oversees it all is being breached. And one of the scientists, I believe, who works for the system is exploring how to remove sound, like just completely get rid of it. And it's just a lot going on. You just really have to read it. You just go look it up, go look up the book and go read it. But this is fantastic. And that's really like genuinely all I can say about this. Haruki Murakami's writing is so dreamlike and strange, and he does not care that it does not make sense probably the first 500 times that you read it. So, but no, Hard-Boiled Wonderland is really not that difficult it's not hard to understand at all, but it's hard to explain. So I just encourage you like to go pick it up. And if this is your first Murakami novel, I think that's fine. I mean, I'm not like a prolific like Murakami expert or anything like that, but I think this is a good place to start with him for sure. But good luck telling your friends what it's about, because you won't know. Next, this is the 4th to last book, I think. Next is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. In Rebecca, we have this main character, doesn't have a real first name, we just call her Mrs. De Winter. She ends up marrying this really wealthy man named Maxim De Winter, and she is taken to live in his big house, big mansion on the Cornish coast. From the moment of her arrival, things are so strange and just very eerie. The housekeeper there, Mrs. Danvers, is just off the walls. So we just have a lot of things going on here as Mrs. De Winter is trying to settle into her new life and into her new position, like as this wealthy man's wife. But as she's trying to settle in and like learn the ropes of the mansion and like her duties in the house and stuff like that, she's kind of being haunted but not like ghost haunted. It's more psychological than that. She's being the spirit of Maxim de Winter's first wife, Rebecca. See what I did? See what Daphne du Maurier did there? The spirit of Rebecca is very much alive in the house, and her memory is very present, just in every hallway. I mean, and things just really get dark really quickly. But I mean, this is such a great piece of Gothic lit. I mean, not that I haven't read like a ton of Gothic literature, but this I think this is how it's done, essentially. I think I was always kind of really turned off by it because I just, in my mind, thought like, oh, like, the book is too old, like, I'm not going to really understand what's going on. I remember being young in elementary school, and it had this really awful cover that just made it look like a romance novel, and I was like, oh my god, that's for old people, I can't read that. So, I just always had this notion of what, like, Rebecca was in my mind, but I read this a few years ago, guys, and man, this book, it's a classic for a reason. We got 3 more books left. Hang in there with me. 3 more. Night Film by Marisha Pessl. This book is a ride, and of all of these, this is one of those books I read and I thought it was fine, but I didn't really kind of give it any like too much thought after that. I think I gave it a 3-star when I finished with it, and I was like, okay, whatever, it's fine. But I was still thinking about it, and like a year had passed, and I was like, I can't get this book out of my mind. Why am I still going back to this? Why am I still thinking about this book? And gosh, I started reading it again, and I was like, this is why I'm still thinking about this book. I really like this book. So it took me a while to realize this, but Night Film is actually pretty good. Night Film, we have this iconic director, Stanislav Cordova. His films are wild. Like, they're out there nuts. He's such a recluse, and part of his iconic legacy, I think, is built around the fact that he is so mysterious and he is a recluse. Like, they don't show his movies in theaters because they're so disturbing, essentially. And so he over the years, Cordova has built this cult following of people who show like red band screenings of his movies in tunnels and in dark corners of the internet. And like, I mean, the guy has like some crazy followers. And so, I mean, this is just very much a part of pop culture. People worship his work, essentially, but don't know much about the man behind the work. And so the story starts when the director, his 24-year-old daughter, Ashley Cordova, is found dead, I believe, in a warehouse in Manhattan. And that kind of starts the story from there. And we have this disgraced journalist who is hell-bent, essentially, on exposing once and for all, like, what is happening with Cordova. Who is this man, really? Why are his movies so strange? And essentially, what happened to his daughter, Ashley. And the journey that he goes on just, I mean, takes him through the ropes mentally, emotionally, and he becomes so wrapped up, so involved in the cult following that this man has. And it really disturbing stuff. And you really, at one point, which is, I think, so incredible on Marisha Pestl's part, at one point you're really considering like what is fact and what is fiction, like what, I don't know what to believe anymore. And I think the ending the ending pays off so well, in my opinion. So this is one book where it actually did not initially start off as a favorite of mine, but I could not get it out of my head. I could not stop thinking about it. And just the more I did think about it, the more I'm like, yep, I think that was pretty great. The next book is Lexicon by Max Berry. I am obsessed with everything that happens in this book. We have this boarding school in Virginia, and they are not teaching kids math and science and reading and all that jazz. They are teaching kids how to use language as a weapon. And when these kids graduate from this school, they become what's known as poets. Our story starts when our main character, Emily, she is a hustler on the streets of San Francisco. She does what she can to survive. Yeah, and she's like a card shark. She is just so good at swindling people out of their money by playing cards. And her skills kind of catch the attention of recruiters from the school. And she becomes through her training and through everything that happens, Emily soon becomes a danger to society, essentially. And then we actually have a parallel story happening alongside this one that I don't want to say too much about because that will just really give everything away. But we have another story happening, and the book is flipping back between Emily's perspective and this other perspective until they finally come together in this epic battle of knowledge and coolness and creativity. I just think this is such a creative concept, and this is such a smart book. Like, sometimes I'd be reading this and I'm thinking, what in the world did I just read? What is going on? Like, how is this happening? I mean, I just had so many borderline existential crisis questions as I was reading this book. But this book is a lot of things. It is, if you love language, I think I said this before, but if you love like language, linguistics, anthropology, that kind of thing, what are you doing? Why haven't you read this yet? I mean, this book is great. So I had such a blast reading this, and I recommended this to someone at work, and she loved it, and that just made me really happy because I love when people love my favorite books. That's it. That's all. Okay, guys. This is the moment we all, hopefully, we all have been waiting for. We are down to the final book in this really extremely long list of favorites. All the books I just showed you like 18 books, I think. They're all fantastic. They're all great. You should read all of them. And they will always have a place on my favorites shelf. But this one right here, this book changed my life. I'm not going to go into like The House and the Wise or anything like that, but this is the first book that I read after I graduated from college, and I was just in such a different, transitioning into such a different like headspace after that happened, and I found this book. That book is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I love every single page, every single word, every single thing, every single character. Like, I will shove this book into like strangers' hands. So we have this group of classics students at this liberal arts college in New England, which is very similar to my life story up until a few years ago. Classics major at a small school. We have this main character, Richard, who is from California originally, and he falls in with this group of students who are just intellectually superior. They want you to think to basically everybody else on campus, intellectually superior, really tight-knit group, just very elusive and cool and dignified and beautiful, and Richard is drawn to them, and along with their classics mentor. But the more Richard starts, being accepted into their circle and taking classics classes with them, he realizes that something is not quite right with this group of people. And then, time goes on and he just kind of gets swept into the horrible people that they are. I mean, it's just fascinating. But the what I love about this book is that it tells you in the very beginning, like first page of this group of students, someone is dead. We know who killed them. Like, we know who killed this person. And so the whole book is leading up to that moment when this character kind of met his end. And then in the midst of all of that, you find out that this group actually committed, even before that, like this group committed a crime that I can't talk about because you need to read it. So yeah, I mean, The Secret History is the book that I like shout from rooftops. I'm not even, actually I am joking, but like I shouldn't be, because I feel very compelled now to get on my roof and start screaming at my neighbors to read The Secret History, because this book is incredible. This is I have all three of Donna Tartt's novels. Like, I have this one, I have The Goldfinch, and I have The Little Friend. I haven't read those two. I'll get around to it, especially before the movie comes out for The Goldfinch. Until then, I'll just bask in the greatness that is The Secret History, because I really think I could be the most basic person, but I think this book is like the best thing I've ever read in my life. These books I just showed you honestly mean the world to me. I love every single one of them. This is not the last time that you'll hear them mentioned. In other videos, I may make reference to them or say, oh yeah, that's my favorite book of all time. You'll know what I'm talking about now. So like, I'm just glad to finally have made a video like this, especially in honor of World Book Day. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, if you feel inspired to read any of these books, but also, more importantly, let me know down in the comments what your favorite book of all time is, because that's one of my favorite things. I love asking people, what is your favorite book of all time? Because that, I think, when you know what books have touched people, you just know already so much more about them, I feel. So I would love that. Let me know down below what books have changed you, what books will stay with you, and let's talk about it. So yeah, that's it for me. I will see you guys in the next video.